live stream this meeting now. All right, we've started. Okay, live stream this meeting now. All right, we've started. Okay, great.
Dr. Mehta, I have to go grab my glasses. I'll be back in a moment, in a jiffy.
Okay, excellent.
I can't be without them.
Oh, you and I both. Mr. Sampson, Mrs. F. Young, welcome. Mr. Egono, welcome. Mr. Emmanuel, welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. I feel good to be here.
Okay.
Oh, okay, good. Our authors are back. So we were trying to welcome you to Ebony Network's book club. We're excited that you're here. Our book club takes several forms, sometimes with or without the author. Okay. Today, we will host our book discussion with a phenomenal and accomplished author, beautiful Professor Nwando Achebe. Delving into the fascinating history of Ahebi Ugbabe, an extraordinary Igbo woman who defied gender norms and became a king in colonial Nigeria. But it's important to note that the relevance of this book discussion goes beyond what happened in the past. It's World Ebony Network's way of addressing contemporary issues that drive societal deviances, as well as providing an opportunity for those seeking to connect with their roots to learn about the culture. In fact, joining us today is my African-American brother, Chief Ed Haynes, who recently became a chief in Ezinachi Okigwe, a community in Imo State with the same ethnic group as where the story took place. So Chief Ed, that's what I call him. You told me you were looking forward to today's book discussion, right?
Absolutely, especially when you can take where they have art imitating life, and they published the book, The Woman King, to be on here with the real Woman King is definitely an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to share the airwaves with her. I want to thank the World Ebony Network for giving us the opportunity to return to the motherland and to go through the chieftaincy process, which has changed my life forever. And I just want to thank you for that. And I look forward to developing even more and having others to take advantage and to go back and be able to take place on the continent.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You know, when I told you about this, we talked about some key words that we saw in a book. One was like female husband, and there was a child pride, and you know, concepts that we felt was still relevant today, especially when a group of people, and I know that's not what Professor Achebe, I just want to make it very clear, was not writing about same-sex marriage here, but that key word seemed to be what other people are also turning into something else too. So getting the clarity today on some of those words and some of the practices is very important, because at some point we're not going to be here. And when we go, we would like for our children to know what the culture is, and so that they will be able to carry it forward. So yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. So this just want to let us know that this event is recorded and streamed to social media, and links to this recording of all the interviews can be found on our website or in our social media. But last but not least, let me share what World Ebony Network's vision and mission. World Ebony Network is dedicated to reinforcing the enduring and noble philosophies, principles, and practices, the 3 Ps of our forefathers, and appreciating the good aspects of other heritages. Our mission helps to achieve our 3-part vision, which is to plead the socioeconomic causes of people of African ancestry, to reconcile the estranged cultural relationships of people of African ancestry, and to appreciate the good aspects of other heritages. We're not only educating about culture, but we also assist in mentoring people, giving arms to those who need help. For instance, during COVID, we fed people both here in America and in Nigeria and other places too, with our limited resources, including and also empowering our young people and different age groups. And one of them just recently joined us from Nigeria, a young man from the same place that this story took place. And what struck me and what I liked about this young man is, rather than going to do scam people or whatever, he let me just read. His name is Ugu Samson Chibozo. He's a young, vibrant Enugu Ezike village boy who rose from palm tree climb into a first class and best graduating student of forestry and environmental management, and currently serving his place or his fatherland as a youth corporal, and aspiring to further his studies abroad through fully funded scholarship. And he's also a professional beekeeper, and he's here, and he just became a member of World Ebony Network. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy that he's here to join us. And so I'm not going to go for further. I just want us to start, and I'm going to introduce Chief Ibe, who's also he's a seasoned lawyer, practiced for 40 years and retired, and came to lend his brain to World Ebony Network. And he's here with us, and his name is Chief Maxwell Ibe, and he will do a short prayer before we start. Chief Ibe.
Thank you so much. Oh God, our Heavenly Father, we thank thee this day. Thank thee for life. Thank thee for life of our family, that of our friends. Mighty God, all we are going to say or do today, may we be single to thy glory, so that we be better human beings, better neighbors, better fathers, better husbands, better wives, and better to the glory of mankind. Receive all the honor, receive all the glory. In Jesus' wonderful name, amen.
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 Thank you.
Amen.
All right.
I hate to interrupt you. Could you please send a link to Angel, because she's not able to get on with the link that I sent her.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds great. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Angel is actually the one that is going to introduce our lovely author. So let me send her the link. And as I'm doing that, I will yield the floor to Chief Ibe again, so that he can tell us a little bit about the importance of why we're here too. Chief Ibe.
What did you say?
While I'm trying to send a link to Angel, would you also re-emphasize why we're here today?
In summary, we are here to have a deeper and better understanding of the cultural dynamics as it relates to women, the society, the changes that are happening in society in relation to the various sexes, and its role in building a better society, its role in contributing to the growth of civilization. All these things will be known through the works and writings of accomplished authors like Professor Nwando, who has a better perspective of what can be done, what has been done of the past, and give us a prognosis for the future. It is an interactive session. We come here with open mind, ready to learn, ready to absorb. Nobody has a monopoly of knowledge. All their contributions and all their suggestions will be addressed without prejudice, with eye single to, like I prayed, to make us better, more informed. If you are more informed, you are in a better position to make a better decision. That's why we're here. Our civilization is in crisis, and we cannot allow it to go down. Something must be done to rescue it, because our civilization is under challenge. We need people at the rooftop to say, this cannot be done. This was what happened, and this is where we are going. That's why we are having this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I see that Miss Angel and her family are here. I will turn it over to Miss Fields to introduce them. Miss Fields?
Yes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce these young people. They were so excited to be a part of this. And this is our future. When people run away from what they need to do, it was so refreshing to see that these children at a day's notice were so excited to be a part of this. And at this time, I'd just like to introduce you to Kamsi. He's going to introduce his sisters, Joy and Angel. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
have
Ms.
a
Fields.
wonderful time. You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Kipsy Osago. I'm 11 years old, and I'll be introducing you to my sisters. This is Angel. She is 14 years old. This is Joy. Is 6 years old. And they will be reading a biography of Dr. Achebe.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
You're welcome. Professor Nwando, the Jack and Margaret Sweet Endowed Professor of History, multi-award winner and Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Faculty Development, and Strategic Implementation in the College of Social Science at Michigan State University. She is the founding editor-in-chief of the Journal of West African History, published by Michigan State University Press, member of the Executive Board of the Association for the Society of the Worldwide African Diaspora, past member of African Association Board of past co-convener of ASA's Women's Caucus, co-director of the Christy and Shini Achebe Foundation, and co-CEO of Achebe Masterworks. Dr. Achebe received her PhD from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2000. In 1996 and she served as a Fulbright Hay Scholar in University Department of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She was also a 2000 Woodrow Wilson Women's Studies Fellow. Her research interests involved the use of oral history in the study of women, gender, and sexuality in Nigeria. Achebe is the author of 6 books. Her first book, Farmers, Trades, Warriors, and Kings, Female Power and Authority in the Northern Igbo Land, 1900, was published by Heinemann. Achebe's second book, The Female Colonial Nigeria, Ahebi Ugbabe, winner of the 3-book and Ado Cinder Book Award, the Barbara Penner Canner Book Award, and the Gitu Shidori Book Award is the full-length critical biography on the only female warrant chief and king in colonial Nigeria and arguably British Africa.
Writing was funded by a generous grant from the WEN Grant Foundation. Dr. Achebe is a co-author of History of West Africa e-course. She is also a co-editor with William Berger and Charles Ambulett, Companion to African History, co-editor with Claire Robertson of Holding the World Together, African Women in Perspective, and sole author of Ohio University, Press Female, Monarch, and Merchant Queen in Africa. In addition to the WEN grant, Dr. Achebe has received a number of other prestigious grants, including awards from Rockefeller Foundation, Woodrow Wilson, Fulbright Hayes, Ford Foundation, the World Health Organization, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. She has given over 100 invited keynote lectures and talks on 4 continents in universities in the US, UK, Portugal, Italy, Spain, Germany, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and China. She has also served as an expert consultant for the History Channel, A&E Network Preparations, Roots, the Miniseries Remake, Disney Channel's African Princess Project, and has been interviewed and featured in documentaries and new programming on 3 different continents. She was featured in the History Channel documentary Roots, A History Revealed, and Roots, A New Vision, South Africa. Broadcasting Corporation News Program, Morning Live, Nigerian Television, Authority, Weekend Deal 15 Minute Studio, and British Broadcasting Corporation. Professor Chinua Achebe, A Hero Returns to Witness. Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. The History for and the Novels That Shaped Our World, Things Fall Apart. She was also a featured speaker at the 2019 Carver History Reform debate in Berlin, A Stolen Past, Europe and the Compensation of Colonial Injustice. You can listen to her speak to New Books Network and African Past and present podcasts about her critical biography, The Female King.
And that's it. That will be the end of our autobiography of Achebe.
I want to thank you for young people for doing that. And certainly at this notice, it was amazing that you were able to pull that together so well. I'm proud of the 3 of you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, so at this time, we will now turn it over to Professor Nwando Achebe. The floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Mecha, for inviting me. I'm really privileged and excited to be here. Thanks to the World Ebony Network, to Chief Ibe, to Chief Haynes. Thank you very much. And especially to the young people that was fabulous. I don't see them anymore, but I think it was Kamsi, Joy, and who was the third?
Ada.
Anada. Okay. Thank you so very much for that incredibly warm introduction. I truly appreciate it. I think that, are we good? Because I'm hearing.
Yes, okay. Please.
So I think that we can go into what we are gathered here today for, which is short readings from my Female King of Colonial Nigeria book, the Female King of Colonial Nigeria, Ahebi Ugbabe book. I have a number of short excerpts that I will be sharing, and then hopefully there'll be time for conversation, dialogue, and for questions. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
So let me start. I am not going to assume that everybody in the Zoom box has read this, so I'm just going to do a really quick overview. So this book is the fascinating history of an Igbo woman, Ahebi Ugbabe, who became king in colonial Nigeria. Ugbabe was exiled from Igbo land. She became a prostitute. She traveled widely, and she learned to speak many languages. She became a close companion to Nigerian Igala kings and the British officers who supported her claim to the office of headman, warrant chief, and later king. So in this biography, I trace the roots of Ugbabe's rise to fame and fortune, while providing critical perspectives on women, gender, sex, and sexuality, and the colonial encounter. I also consider how it was possible for a woman to take the office and responsibilities of a traditional male role. So that should give you a little bit of a background of what I am doing in this particular book. So I will start in a moment. So I will read from pages 1 and 2, which is called The Discovery. The Discovery is from my first chapter called Unkwado, The Preparation. All trees grow in the forest, but only the aura singled itself out. So the discovery. No one will grant you a PhD for writing another history of the Women's War. With this stern chastisement and a dry chuckle, my mentor and advisor, the late Professor Boniface Obichere, plunged me into a nervous state of trepidation. It was a sunny afternoon that day in March 1995, and the Women's War my mentor had so ungraciously denounced was, of course, the Igbo Women's War of 1929, that systematically organized rebellion that the women themselves called Ogu Omuwani, War of the Women, but the colonial government disparagingly dismissed as a women's riot. It was the war that was in fact responsible for the vast number of colonial reports on Igbo land and culture, a war that fueled an overwhelming preoccupation among British colonialists with trying to determine for themselves what it was about Igbo land and its culture that would encourage Igbo women to behave in such an uncouth a manner. But I digress. Why the curt reprimand from my advisor? Well, I had just confided that I really hadn't the foggiest idea of what it was that I wanted to write my doctoral dissertation on. Actually, that was not altogether true, because I did know that I wanted to write a history of Igbo women, but which Igbo women and what history? I had no intelligent answer for myself or for my tough dissertation advisor. It will take me another few months to be able to give voice to my own rhetorical question about which women and what Igbo history, and answer it I would with much confidence. My newfound self-assurance stemmed from uncovering, albeit after a painstaking process of wading through hundreds, no, make that thousands of pages of Igbo anthropology and ethnography, a female voice. This process of exploration that my mentor had sent me on was a nerve-wracking 3-month ordeal, a process during which I would silently and sometimes audibly curse him every 100 pages or so of not finding any tangible information on Igbo women. Pray tell me, I would question myself in sheer exasperation. Why is Professor Obichere insisting that I plow through these oppressive pages? After all, He and I know that the British colonial anthropologists and ethnographers had not the slightest interest in Igbo women. What a fruitless activity. But then, there it was, tucked away in the first paragraph of the 158th page of C.K. Meek's Law and Authority in a Nigerian Tribe. 11 words that introduced me, and of course the rest of Meek's readers, to a nameless king of female persuasion. It read, quote, "The village group of Ogurute is distinguished by having a female eze," end quote. It was this remarkable woman who had transformed herself into a man who would, from that point on, consume many of my waking thoughts. It is this eze on whom my critical biography is based. The female king of colonial Nigeria focuses on the life and times of Ahebi Ugbabe, the only female warrant chief and king in colonial Nigeria and arguably British Africa. It fills a considerable gap in African and gender studies scholarship by introducing readers to critical perspectives on women, gender, sex and sexuality, and the colonial encounter. More innovatively, this biography seeks to encourage new ways of seeing, reading, and interpreting African worlds beyond received categories of analysis. In important ways, it complicates, problematizes, and challenges presumptions of hegemonity within the categories of woman, prostitute, and slave. It does this by offering new theories that recognize a multiplicity of African female masculinities: female headman, female warrant chief, female king, and female husband, while delineating the limitations of such gendered transformations. So that's the first section that I would like to read. The next section, and hopefully I'll get you through her story, is really sort of talks about my time in the Nsukka field. And I call this section Becoming Nwada, Daughter of the Lineage, the Journey and the Process. Okay. In 1998, I was back in Enugu-Ezike. The Fulbright Hayes dissertation fellowship that I had secured allowed me a year to attempt to gain the trust and confidence of individual oral history collaborators. I hoped that somewhere along the way, I would be able to make a breakthrough. And breakthrough I did on September 26, 1998, the day that I became Nwada, daughter of the lineage. My conversation that day with Abodonwa Idoko started like any other interview. There I was sitting across from one of the most powerful dibias, medicine men in the community. Something about his persona, the way that he carried himself, made me pose yet again the question that the people of Ahebi's town had been having difficulty answering. Nani, our father. Since 1996, I have been going around this village, talking to people who knew Ahebi. They have told me many things about Ahebi. They have told me that when she was a young girl, she got lost. And when I have asked how a young girl gets lost, they have shrugged their shoulders in uncertainty. And if pushed harder, they have said that she became a prostitute after she ran away. Thus, still not answering my "how did she get lost" question. Because of this, I have become frustrated. Do you happen to know how Ahebi got lost? Abodo Nwa Idoko looked at me straight in the eye. He cleared his throat loudly and chuckled. It was a dry chuckle. When he spoke, he said this to me. I see that our people have been giving you the runaround. Did you say you were here in 1996? I nodded. Wonderful. You tried. Well, they have done so because they are afraid to tell you the truth. He reached into his pocket of his shirt and brought out a small round tin container of Otaba snuff, which he opened with much drama. He lifted a fingerful of brown, almost black ground substance into his left nostril. Then he closed the container, tapped on it with his index and middle fingers, reopened it, lifted another fingerful into his right nostril. He cleared his throat and he let out a sneeze. Then, with as much drama as before, he pulled out a handkerchief and noisily blew his nose. He continued, I am not afraid. No one and nothing can harm me. I am a powerful medicine man. He then paused for dramatic effect. Ahebi did not get lost. Do you hear what I am saying to you? If anyone asks you, tell them that I, Abodo Nwa Idoko, said it. She did not get lost. She ran away. Idoko then told me in no uncertain terms why Ahebi had run away Owapo, a detail I discuss at length in chapter 1. I felt as though a boulder had fallen on me. I could not speak for some time. It all made sense now. But why had the people of Enugu hidden this fact from me, or at least remained silent about it? Why had it taken the better part of 2 years for someone to reveal this pertinent detail to me? What did the silence around Ahebi's flight, Mwapo Ahebi, say about community memory and the reconstruction of that memory? Perhaps not everyone knew, I reasoned, trying to explain away the community silence. After all, what happened to Ahebi was not a community event, but a private one. And as such, neither she nor her family was under any obligation to discuss it. Nonetheless, there must have been other people who, like Abodo Nwa Idoko, knew. It was only after I had re-entered the community, Abodo Nwa Idoko's revelation in hand, that the community reception of me changed. In my post-reveal interview with one of Enugu most educated sons, Boniface Abugu, he was only too happy to corroborate Adoko's assertion. His confirmation came in form of a riddle. He said, all I know is that Baba killed Giwa, but if you insist on adding Ngida to Baba, then who am I to disagree with you? Abugu was, of course, alluding to Nigeria's corrupt and underhanded head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, who it was widely believed that in October 1986 killed Newswatch editor-in-chief Dele Giwa with a letter bomb bearing the Nigerian government's official insignia. In evoking this riddle, Boniface Abugu confirmed first the factor that led up to Ahebi's taking flight, Mwapo Ahebi, and second, the reason most of my oral history collaborators had previously not admitted to any knowledge of this fact: fear. Boniface Abugu admitted in the same conversation that he was not immune to the community fear himself, but felt strongly that because he was simply confirming evidence that I had already gathered, no harm would come to him. In the final analysis, it had taken a fearless individual, a powerful dibia, medicine man, and herbalist to reveal society's secret. From that point on, collaborator after collaborator wasted no time in not only corroborating his assertion, but also confiding other quote unquote unsavory facts, sometimes in whispered tones about the female king that I was researching. My relationship with the community had indeed changed. I was no longer a stranger, visitor, or guest, Onyabia. I had become Nwanda, a daughter of Enugu Ezike, who could be trusted with all information. It was as a result of this earned change in my positionality that I was granted the wherewithal to piece together, through community memory, the life story of this remarkable woman, Ahebi Ugbabe. And I am most grateful and appreciative to the Enugu Ezike community for this opportunity. So that gives you just a sense of part of my research process. You know, this is a book that took me over 15 years to research and write. So it's not something that I did overnight. If anybody knows Ahebi Ugbabe today, it's because of this painstaking research. Like I mentioned earlier, the only mention of her was in C.K. Meek's book, and she wasn't even named, 11 words. Very little mention of her in the Colonial archives. So this was a painstaking oral history collaboration with the Enugu Ezike community, especially the Ogurute community. Okay, so let me now segue and talk about when deities marry. Ahebi Ugbabe was dedicated in marriage to the deity Ohe. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. When deities marry. It was only after I had spent several months asking questions and gaining the trust and confidence of individual collaborators that I began to get a sense of what really happened to Ahebi. Apparently, when Ahebi Ugbabe was young, probably about 13 or 14 years old, her family was experiencing a lot of misfortune. Their farms were yielding little, their trading did not flourish, and illness plagued various members of their household. In describing the chaos that enveloped Ahebi's family during this time, famed Enugu Ezike medicine man and healer, Chief Abodonwa Idoko, put it like this, quote, "There is a way that our people say it, that her lineage was becoming extinct," end quote. In an attempt to trace the origin of these ill fortunes, Ahebi's father sought the expertise of a diviner, Ojewafa. This was a common practice at the time. Diviners, or Wafas, or Ndi Owafa, were believed to be endowed with the skill to unearth secrets, perceive the unknown, both the present and the future, and discern the will of the gods. Iwafa meant that a person or persons sought out the diviner, whose specialty it was to divine the root cause of their problems. Onye Owafa was considered to be the master of all esoteric knowledge and wisdom. The words Owafa mean the maker of Afa, or the interpreter of Afa. Iba in this context means the investigation, the performance, or the procedure of finding out the unknown. The Igbo basically recognize two worlds: the spiritual unseen world, Animo, and the human visible world, Owa. The unseen world is supreme, and the Igbo ascribe most serious occurrences in the visible world to the unseen beings that inhabit the spiritual world. In an attempt to understand this unseen world, individuals seek out the services of a diviner who reads signs by casting or throwing divination seeds or cowries, and then interpreting the codes of that those objects reveal. Anyoma dibia or Obafa bo anyojo mado. A good time for the diviner is a bad time for the individual. After consulting his beads, the diviner delivered the revelation. Ahebi's father had committed a grave crime against a kinsman, and consequently, the goddess Ohe, whom he had offended, was exacting a punishment on his entire family. Ohe was the goddess of creation, fertility, and protection. She was known to punish individuals for inappropriate or offensive behavior, such as murder, thievery, and adultery. Ohe's Atama, or chief priest, acted on her behalf by collecting the debts owed her, placing taboos on disagreeable behavior, and carrying out her oaths. A great injustice was unleashed when the seer revealed the mysteries of his divination. In order for things to get better, Ahebi would have to be offered as a living sacrifice to appease Ohe. The historical record remains clouded on what Ahebi's father's reaction to this news was. What we do know, however, is that when Ahebi was informed of the impending dedication, her reaction was anything but predictable. Ahebi Ugbabe Nwatakili Walanya, the difficult and conceited girl who did not listen to reason, did something extraordinary. She refused to be dedicated. Her actions were an expression of overt resistance. Her defiance was twofold. First, she was revolting against the institution of domestic slavery and of all of its oppressions and subjugations. And second, she was rejecting the patriarchal authority and tenets of her culture that allowed guiltless individuals to be victimized by such dedications. In refusing to be dedicated, Ahebi Ugbabe was in essence rejecting the restrictions that society imposed on individuals, especially young girls and women. Her actions pitted her against her society, and as a result, she was forced to bear the consequences of her decision. She could no longer live in Enugu Ezike. By rejecting the norms for group living in her society, Ahebi Ugbabe had committed a cardinal sin. Her only alternative was to remove herself from that community. Ahebi escaped to Igalaland. She took flight. Awapo. So she escapes to Igalaland and she spends probably about 20-something years there. Okay. She becomes, as you heard in the beginning, a prostitute. She becomes a trader extraordinaire. So this is a woman who accumulated so much money that she became a trader in horses, which was really unknown for a woman to participate. That's, you know, some of the most extraordinary traders traded in horses at the time. But she was able to parlay her her work as a sex worker, and I go into this in my book. I'm not going to read from that passage, but really talking about the construction of sex work in the Igbo worldview and the Igala worldview, which was really not about diminishing women, but it was about the woman's power and authority to own, control her body, and use it in the manner in which she wanted to. And so prostitution was not just about sex and sex work. It was about a woman having total control of her body and being able to use it in the ways that she wanted to. Prostitution in the Igbo context and in the Igala context was about conversation. It was about eating. It was about building community and all of that. But let me read to you these next few paragraphs. I want to read to you a section that I call Performing Masculinities. Okay. Like I said, she spent this time in Enugu-Ezike. Not only did she become a prostitute, a trader, she also was connected to the Ata of Igala land. The Ata of Igala land was the king of Igala land. And from what I was able to uncover, she had intimate relationships with the king of Igala land. And it was in his company that she meets up with the British who are patrolling the area. And from what I was able to uncover, she did also have relations with British colonial, some of the British colonialists in the area. So this part is called Performing Masculinities. And before I read, it was in Ahebi's company that the British colonials were able to come into her community. So she showed them the routes through which to conquer her community. Performing Masculinities, Homecoming, and she becomes a man, 1916 to around 1930. This section is called Oge Otipo, during the time of the destroyer, the creation and consolidation of a new government. By 1914, most of Igbo country had been subjugated by the British. It would take until 1920, though, to bring the expanse of land in the northernmost corner of Igbo land effectively under British control. In chapter 2, which I didn't really read to you, we saw how the British relied on intelligence information provided by members of the groups that they were attending to conquer. Ahebi Ugbabe was one such informant. She revealed the routes the British could use to reach and conquer Enugu-Ezike. Now, whether Ahebi collaborated with the British in order to help them subjugate her people, or for the more noble motive of suppressing the trade in slaves, by the mid-1910s, Ahebi Ugbabe had returned home to her people. Immediately following her return to Enugu-Ezike, Ahebi allied herself with the political elite. Her linguistic skills gave her access to the leading Igala and Nupe people who dominated most parts of Nsukka, and to the British colonial officers working in the area. Ahebi Ugbabe knew Pidgin English, was the only person in her village who could communicate with the British. She wasted no time. She quickly cultivated a relationship with them and began acting as an intermediary between her people and the new colonial masters. Ever ambitious and talented, Ahebi recognized in the British new opportunities for political power and for gendered transformations that had previously not existed in the pre-colonial Nsukka order. Within a few months of her return to Enugu-Ezike, she was able to expel Ugwu Okegwu, the aged and increasingly incompetent British government headman. Ugwu did not speak English, Pidgin English, or Igala, and consequently had very limited political influence. This was the first in a series of gender transformations into distinct female masculinities that Ahebi Ugbabe performed in her ultimate quest to attain full manhood within the context of competing indigenous Igbo and alien Igala and British orders. Ugwu Okegwu was an Igbo man the British had appointed to be the head of the community. In Nsukka political culture, the symbolic heads of the community were the Onyishis Umunwoke, the oldest men in the village, and the Onyishis Umuwanyi, the oldest women in the village. These positions were not wholly political in nature. They were also religious, signifying the ritual discernment of the recognized heads. According to A.E. Afibo, to be a lineage head, one needed not political ability, but free descent, reputation for moral rectitude, and generally the right age, end quote. M.N. Green puts it like this, quote, the lineage heads might exercise certain political functions, but basically they were there in virtue of their position in the kinship system, end quote. However, the British colonials often did not see eye to eye with the community-recognized Onishi Umuoke, and as a general rule, excluded Igbo women altogether from governmental matters and leadership positions. Moreover, many of these Onishis declined the advances of the British when they approached them with leadership positions, offering younger men to occupy these positions in their stead. The British consequently appointed agreeable males, usually strong and audacious young men, who would readily follow their instructions, and could thus be molded into stooges. The time-honored Igbo ideals of respectability, such as title-taking, honor, and age, were not factors in these appointments. These so-called indigenous headmen would come to realize powers that were much too individualized and autocratic for Igbo sensibilities. So Ahebi Ugbabe, when I say that she became a man, her first phase of performing female masculinities was to become an Igbo headman. And so she took over from Mr. Headman Ugwu, who could not speak English, Igbo, Pidgin English, could not speak Igala, could not speak Nupe, all languages that Ahebi Ugbabe could speak. Okay, so let's now look at phase 2 of her performing masculinity. So first she becomes a headman, then she becomes a warrant chief. Okay. Performing masculinities, phase 2. Ahebi's transformation into female warrant chief. In October 1918, the British formed the Native Court of Enugu-Ezike. They chose 3 principal court members, Ahebi Ugbabe. They chose 3 principal court members. Ahebi Ugbabe had served the British well as a government headman. Thus, it was hardly surprising that Ahebi became the only woman in all of colonial Nigeria to be chosen to sit as a member of the native court as a warrant chief. She was described by District Officer V.K. Johnson as, quote, a female of strong Igala tendencies, who was allowed to sit as a member of the council in recognition of her past services, end quote. So now let's look at phase 3 of Ahebi's gendered transformation. And this is her transformation into a female king. Multiple gendered transformations. 23 to 24. Okay. So the coronation of a female king, phase 3 of Ahebi's gendered transformation. Enjoying the fruits of her position as warrant chief was not enough for the ambitious Ahebi Ugbabe. Over the next few years, she mounted a vigorous campaign to become Eze, king, to further cement her position in government and society. In non-centralized egalitarian societies, there was no king. Actually, no, let me not do that part because I didn't talk to you about King Ebule. So let me skip that. Okay, so Ahebi had performed effectively as female headman and was performing just as well as female warrant chief, at least as far as the British were concerned. Now she would be introducing her third and arguably most powerful performance yet, the female masculinity of female king. This time, her gender transformation, although it was sanctioned by Igbo society in principle, was performed and realized through her associations with Igala. Astute as always, Ahebi was able to ingeniously engineer and redefine the male political institution of Ata, that is the Igala paramount king, into a supreme female masculinized and Igbo-nized sovereignty who espoused British and Igala ideals of rank and hierarchy rather than Nsukka Igbo standards of gerontocracy, merit, and respectability. In other words, her performance of the female masculinity of female king was an attempt to transport a unique Igala system of political leadership, the Ata Igala, into Igbo land. The Igala kinship, unlike its Igbo counterpart, the Igbo, for instance, had Ezenri, who was primarily a spiritual leader, was more centered or was more concerned with notions of rank and hierarchy than with notions of individual achievement. Okay, so Ahebi has become a female king. She had to journey to Igala land to be made king by the Ata of Igala land. We're told that she went there with her musicians singing songs of praise. One of the songs is Onya Sina Ahebi Amabweze, Nyajeko Oje Jua ata ida. You know, so if you say that Ahebi will not be king, go and have it out with the ata of Igalaland who made her king. So she had praise singers singing this, and she rode on her horse to Igalaland for the coronation as king. Ahebi also never walked anywhere. She was carried on a hammock by 4 men, and always to the songs of Akanga music, which was praise music that were played for kings. So Ahebi performed her masculinities on so many different levels. So let me look at a day in the life of Ahebi. What was it like in Ahebi's palace? And for that, I want to read a little bit about her palace school. 60. Okay. So Ahebi's palace was incredible. It was amazing, right? She had everything. You know, think about it as a community, right? She had, her court was there. She had a marketplace. She had this training or retraining house for wives who misbehaved. So men could bring their wives who misbehaved to Ahebi's house to be retrained. So she had a retraining house. She had a prostitution house. I mean, she had everything in this palace. She had a school. And so we are going to be talking about her palace school. Let me read a little bit about that. Okay. Ahebi's palace school was called the Ahebi School. And this section I call the Ahebi School and the culmination of a village conflict. In 1930, roughly 10 years after the British administration was instituted, the Roman Catholic mission arrived in Inuguizike. Mr. L.A.C. Halbert, the district officer, a staunch Catholic, encouraged all of his warrant chiefs to embrace this denomination of Christianity and to establish schools where reading, writing, and arithmetic would be taught. In the beginning, mission schools were established in the homes of the warrant chiefs. Ahebi Ugbabe set up such a school in her palace. In many ways, King Ahebi was ahead of her time, a modernizer. Ahebi's palace school was co-educational. It admitted and trained girl children at a time when it was unusual for them to be educated. I'm skipping a whole lot. That's why I need to look at my phone to see. Okay. So she has this school in her palace, in her palace area. All would not remain well at the palace school. A conflict arose between King Ahebi and the community during the tenure of the school's third teacher, Jacob Elam. The reason that Jacob Elam did not stay very long in Ahebi Ugbabe's school was because he had naively attempted to boost the extremely poor enrollment at the palace school without first discussing his plans with Ahebi. Mr. Elam, who had already spent a few months teaching, decided to introduce himself to the elders of Omweda. The elders informed Jacob that attendance was low because he had disregarded tradition. If he came to teach the whole of Omweda, his school should not be in Ahebi's palace, but at the home of the oldest man in Ugurite, according to custom. The teacher, therefore, moved into the oldest man's house without consulting with Ahebi. A slighted Ahebi called in the police, who rounded up all the elders involved and threw them in the Nsukka prison for 3 days. She then sent word to the district officer's interpreter Ishmael, who found her a replacement teacher, and his name was Samuel Nwume. So she replaces Jacob Elam, who had left her home without consultation and got a 4th teacher. Okay. So the underlying reason that the elders encouraged school teacher Jacob Elam to move out of Ahebi Ugbabe's palace was that they had had enough of her antics and abuses. It was not simply that Ahebi had eroded the traditional leadership of male elders by transforming herself into a British-sanctioned and imposed headman and warrant chief, and then into an Igala-imposed female king. She had also abused her political power. The indigenous political elite were particularly troubled by the autocratic practices of Ahebi Ugbabe that constituted unthinkable violations against social mores, such as refusing to consult with the elders, using forced labor, receiving bribes, and forcibly taking away men's wives. So Ahebi Ugbabe herself was a female husband that married numerous wives. The final straw, however, was when the ambitious Ahebi, perhaps in her quest to achieve full manhood, something I theorize as full manhood, invaded the last and ultimate sanctuary of men. She created and brought out a masked spirit, Ebe Ahebi, patterned after the Igala kingdom's fiercest masked spirit, Ekwe. It was the most beautiful masquerade Enugu-Ezike villagers had ever seen. In his groundbreaking study, The Peoples of Southern Nigeria, A. Talbot describes the significance of the masked spirit in Igbo land. Quote, "The Mma are supposed to be the dead returned to earth to assure their families of their safe arrival and happiness in the spirit land. No women are ever allowed to be members, and as a rule, these regard the masquerade society with the utmost dread," end quote. A.O. Onyenike lends further insight into the significance of this cultural practice. Hear his words. "The masquerade serves the special function of differentiating the male and the female in Igbo society. Everywhere it is the exclusive function of the male, while the females are always excluded, even where a female character is portrayed in the masking. The social definition of a man, therefore, is the ability to control a masquerade," end quote. The Igbo expectation about the relationship of women to masked spirits is clear. However, they distinguish between categories of male associations with masquerades as well. In Igbo sensibilities, the Umu Mma masquerade secret society is the institution that separates what I theorize as full men, biological men who have been initiated into the Umu Mma, from uninitiated men and women. It is forbidden for any individual who is born female, that is biological female, or a gender transformed or masculinized woman, including female husbands, female fathers, female sons, and in Ahebi's case, a female warrant chief and female kings, to control a masked spirit in Igbo land. Moreover, it's forbidden for uninitiated biological men to control masked spirits. Biological women, again including gender-transformed women and uninitiated biological men were supposed to run away at the sight of the masquerade. If they claimed knowledge of what was behind the mask, for instance, if they claimed that they had seen the masquerade in its nakedness, they would have committed an abomination against the mask. Thus, although Ahebi Ugbabe had effectively transformed herself into the British and Igala female masculinities of headman, warrant chief, and king, as far as Igbo society was concerned, she could neither create nor control a mass spirit, nor could she view a masquerade in its nakedness, Itwa Ifuma, because she was biologically female. So that, in essence, is the gravity of Ahebi's crime in bringing out a masquerade called Ebe Ahebi. And if I have time, I will conclude with Ahebi's trial. Actually, no, I will conclude with her bringing out of the masquerade, the seizing of the masquerade, and which essentially led to the unraveling of her power. In any way, Zike, it was customary for a masked spirit to be brought out. This performance symbolized the introduction of the masked spirit to the community and normally took place during a festive ceremony held in the Onishi. The Onishi is the oldest man's compound, specifically for this purpose. The highlight of the ceremony was when each masquerade in attendance paid tribute to the Onishi and his council of elders in Dioha. At the time of Ebe's outing, Ebe Ezeba, the Onishi, and who was the luminary who received the community's masquerades. On the day in question, sometime in 1939, all the masked spirits in Ogurute gathered at the Onyishi's compound. Separately, they emerged and took center stage. Each masquerade first performed a short opening sequence, pieces in which they presented themselves to the people and then greeted each elder councilman by his praise name. Then they danced up to the Onishi and courtesied before him as a mark of respect. This process was repeated by each of the masked spirits in attendance to the delight of the people gathered. Soon it was the turn of Ahebi's masked spirit, Ebe, to pay tribute to the Onishi. The people who accompanied the masquerade were many. Amos Abugu described what transpired. Quote, as Ahebi approached with her masquerade to pay tribute to the Onishi, he welcomed them. In Ogurute, the oldest man has a sacred cap of office, which he only wore on very special occasions. Everyone in Ogurute knew to avoid any form of confrontation when the Onishi was wearing this cap. As soon as Ahebi and her Ebe approached the Onishi, he put on his cap. Ahebi Ugbabe brought out kola nuts and offered them to the Onishi, explaining that her masquerade had come to pay its respects. Onishi Ezeba remained silent for a time, shook his head, and then beseeched his ancestors to pretend not to have heard the abomination that had been uttered from Ahebi's lips. After all, women were never allowed to own a masquerade in Igbo land. He then spoke directly to Ahebi. Do you not know our culture? He did not even wait for her to respond, but instead beckoned to his cronies to escort Ahebi's Ebe to the backyard, and it remained never to be seen again. End quote. The indigenous leadership of male elders and full men had finally acted, and the message was clear. Ahebi Ugbabe's impertinence and performance of exaggerated female masculinities, which stemmed from her total disregard of Inue-Zike's restrictions on gendered constructions and transformations, would no longer be tolerated. And I think I will pause now just so that we have time for conversation. The next scenes that I wanted to read were about the actual court case. So they seized her at mass spirit. Ahebi goes to the British to demand that this Ebe be reinstated to her. It goes to the lower court all the way to the Supreme Court in Onitsha. In the end, the British decide in favor of the community and the village elders, the Onishi Umuoke. And it was that decision that really helped in the unraveling of Ahebi's power. You know, at a time when they could have supported her, they decided not to. They no longer needed her. So they sort of cast her away. And from that point, her power, this power of being an image of being supernatural, just unraveled. So much so that Ahebi did not believe that her people will grant her a befitting funeral. So what does King Ahebi do? She buries herself while she's still alive. So she performs this amazing, incredible funeral with all the colonial masters, with the Atavi, Gala, all these people visiting, went on for days on end, huge feast. She ushered herself into the realm of ancestors so that she could become an ancestor. She was not convinced that if she didn't do this while she was still alive, that her people would not do this for her. Okay, so I will end there, and hopefully there is, time for dialogue, for conversation, and all of that. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.
Wow. Professor Achebe, this is incredibly, I mean, there's nothing that I'm going to say here that will, that can express my amazement at the work that you put, the effort that you put into this book, the time that it took you to do this work. This is very, very, very critical, and I'm still trying to recover from all of what I heard today. But I'm just gonna, before I say anything, I mean, just say thank you. Thank you. This was really worth the time for me. I'm so glad that we really did this. And I'll just turn it over to Chief eBay so that I'm not taking up the time, because if you allow me, I'll be oohing an hour and at all of what I heard today. Chief. Can you unmute yourself? Let me unmute you because I'm okay, hold on. Okay, here we go. All right, you're good now. Wait, hold on. He's talking. Chief, this is where we have to ask AI to help us out now. How are we going to do it? Okay, while you're trying to figure it out, let me ask Miss. Okay, I think you're muted now. Okay. Thank you, Chief. You did a great job.
Like I was saying, yeah, your presentation has been very analytical and very insightful, very historical, and has a lot of prognosis. I have no doubt you are true son or true daughter of your father.
Definitely.
The storytelling
Definitely.
aspect has been very wonderful and very down to earth.
Yes.
We are blessed to have listened to you. I'm so blessed. And I will make every effort to get the book. But much as you have spoken, I like you to have some ideas. Why was it necessary that the British, after he assisted them, did not recognize him as a chief? Do you have any inkling about that?
Okay, thanks for that question. So they actually did recognize her as a warrant chief.
Yes.
After she assisted them, they first recognized her as a headman. So they essentially removed the community recognized headman and put Ahebi in his stead. Because she was such a good headman, they then recognized her as a warrant chief. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the British colonial policy in Nigeria, essentially what's happening is that, during this time, Lord Lugard, who was the brainchild of indirect rule, went to northern Nigeria and said, "Who are your kings?" The northern Nigerians said, "Our emirs are our kings." So essentially what British colonial policy is doing with indirect rule at that time is to say, we are ruling through your indigenous authorities. So you're like, okay, the emirs are kings. We're going to give you a warrant. Here's your kinship, right? You are a king. In certain areas like Igbo land, among the Tiv, for instance, these are egalitarian systems that have no kings. They have no kings. Mm-hmm. And so what did they do? They went there. "Who are your kings?" Lord Lugard said. They both said, "We have no kings," right? And so what do? They create the office of king. And this office is called the warrant chief position. It's a certificate that they actually give to opportunistic young men who befriended the British, who probably could speak pidgin English or something, right? And they gave them this certificate essentially saying, "We've made you king." And they were never the rightful leadership of the community, because in Igbo land, leadership was in the hands of what is it called? The male elders and the female elders. So it was a very community-based type of leadership, right? So the British actually made her warrant chief. She was the only female warrant chief in all of British Africa. So that just shows you that the British never, they created the warrant chief's position, but they never placed a woman in that position except her, right? Then that's not enough for her because she's very ambitious, right? So she wants to become king. She does not want to become queen. So when people talk about Queen Ahebi, that is a misnomer. She was not queen, she was king. Eze. The Igbos know about kings and queens, and we have names for it. We have Eze for king. We have Ezenwanyi for queen. She was never an Ezenwanyi. She was a king because she officially transformed herself into a man. And this transformation has its roots in Igbo culture, where you can be born female, but categorized as male, or you can be born male and categorized as female. Sex and gender do not coincide in Igbo land. There's no tension. So I can be born a woman, I'm female, this is my sex, but I can be a social male. That's in essence what Ahebi was doing in transforming herself. So she wasn't quarreling with people. She knew she was a biological female. That's not what she was saying. She's saying, I am a social male. I have become a social male, right? And she becomes king, right? The only time where the British do not support her was not about the warrant chief position or the king's position or the headman position. It was when it came down to her bringing out a mass spirit. They were like, we're not going against the community on this. We cannot decide in your favor. We're deciding in the favor of the community. And if you read the book, you'll see that my analysis says, essentially, that the British had used her and had no more use for her. They had consolidated power in Igbo land, so they didn't need her. When it really mattered, when they could support her, they failed to do so. And that was the beginning of the unraveling of her power. So they did support her up until the bringing out of a mass spirit. And it just goes to show you that, you know, our cultural institutions are so incredibly powerful. The Igbos were willing to turn a blind eye on the headman, the warrant chief. Oh, you say you're king, fine. But no, you cannot bring out a mass spirit. We're drawing the line there. I have another in my first book, the chapter that I talk about Ahebi, I call it Ochichigi Agafegoke. You are governing too much. That's what the community said. Ochichigi Agafegoke. This is way too much for us. So we're going to have to rein you in. And that's what they did.
Sorry, as a follow-up, does it mean that since the community has a very big role, does it mean that it was the kingship or the rulership was sometimes democratic because the community plays a role and says you cannot go more than you necessary? Can it be likened to a mini democracy because the West say they always brought the democracy to us?
Oh yeah, no. What we had pre-colonial was certainly closest to a democracy. Because it's not only an egalitarian system, it's a gerontocracy. That's what the Igbos practiced. Rulership by the community, by elders in the community, not individuals. Right? We have proverbs. The Igbos have no king. If you want to be a king, go and be a king in your mother's backyard. That's what Igbo people say. Because they don't like this whole idea of autocratic leadership. And if you look at Ezenri, which is the king of Yunri, it wasn't really a political, it was a spiritual kinship. Right? And so what we're seeing now in Igbo land is really an evolution where now we have kings, right? But it did not come from the pre-colonial era. It did not. Yeah.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you. It was a democratic system, as democratic as you can get.
Thank you so much, Professor Achebe. There's someone raising his hands, but let me, we're also excited. We can't wait to ask you questions and express our views as well. And so let me remind Chief that he's supposed to be bringing in the moderators too as well. So Chief, don't forget to do that. And I'll hand it back to you.
We have a co-moderator, Benedict Ekinde Ekome. He's an international relations scholar with emphasis on security studies. Former editor-in-chief, environmentalist, and women's rights supporter. Benedict Ekome, take the center stage. Benedict Ekinde Ekome, take the center stage.
He's joining us from London, so he's been his internet has been going off and on. I did try to bring him in. I think it's off again. Well, I guess Miss Fields, bring Miss Fields in. When he will join, when he joins us, he will.
Dr. Z, you take the center stage.
Okay, and let me introduce my co-moderator, and that's Miss Fields. Miss Fields is our acting president of the DMV chapter of World Ebony Network, and she would mostly do the moderating while I support her. And Miss Fields, so I would hand it over to you. I'm sure you have a lot to say, and in the meantime, we have one hand raised. Go ahead, Miss Fields.
I must say that was a fascinating story, and the research that you did was extensive. The insight, I mean, I feel like I was there. You know, it's just amazing the way you wrote that and elaborated on the different issues that were going on at that time. I must say that was fascinating, totally fascinating. And I
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you for that. I thank you for that. Okay, now as far as the hands raised, I
Chief
don't
Dr. Delaga.
Dr. Delaga.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
okay, Dr. Delaga,
So
what would you
can
like?
I? Oh, sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I can go ahead. Oh, okay. Wonderful presentation there, Professor Nwando. And thanks for delving into this era in Igbo history. And as you rightly pointed out, these were some of the disruptive policies of the British that is still haunting us today. Isn't it interesting that Ahebi became a warrant chief and then subsequently was quite disruptive within her Enugu Ezike community because the elders, of course, the ruling class within the Igbo society, the Ottons and also withdrew their support from the colonial government, and so they had to subvert them with this warrant chief. And today we still have that problem within an Igbo. That's why, for example, in Anambra State now, you have the conflict between the governor and the Igwes because now the certificate for chieftaincy is being given by government instead of the community raising their leaders and giving them all form, which is really the Igbo authority that comes down from the ancestors. So thanks for bringing this up because it really should be a case study for like what your father will always say, where the rain began to pick up. This is a seminal work, and I hope that our scholars and our community pay attention to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. And I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Yes. Well, would anyone else like to have a comment or a question for our guest?
Yes, I have one.
Go right ahead.
I wanted to thank her for the extensive research and dedication that it must have taken to stay on this to bring it to the forefront. I find it actually educational in various capacities on different levels. And the viewpoint when you talked about her operating from a position of power when it came to the sex worker side of the viewpoint, I think it's it's one of those taboo topics. However, I think from a empowerment point of view, it gives you a totally different perspective of a woman's ability. We all know the woman is the doorway to the universe to get here. But to be able to understand the shift in mentality, basically to take what is considered a societal negative and turn it into a positive is very, very powerful. And I think that if we could look at that, that would actually help a lot of the misconception that goes on here on the continent and around the world, actually, as it pertains to the power of a woman. That's one piece. The other piece that I received out of this is the awareness from a historical perspective when it comes to the colonizers and their methodology in terms of using you to the point to where you're no longer valuable and discarding you. I think the lesson there is one of the biggest lessons in everything that I've heard today, that if people pay attention to the story, they'll understand not only, what happened in terms of her elevation, but also in her ultimate demise. So I just wanted to thank you for framing that up and helping For those who have eyes, let them see, and for those who have ears, let them hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Appreciate that. And I mean, you know, when you were talking, you know, I didn't have the chance to, I can read a little bit about that, you know, prostitution and how it's constructed in Igbo land. Because you know, again, I feel very strongly about this. I'm not going to read too much, but since you know, raised it, over here I say, in order not to be held captive by inappropriate translations, it is necessary to put an Nsukka Igbo, an Igala face on the institution as it was constructed during the time that Ahebi ran away. First, consider the words in Nsukka Igbo used to designate the concept prostitute. These were varied and seem to have changed over time. Whether or not the names evolved successfully or were used interchangeably or concurrently will require further investigation. Here is what we know. One of the words used was mwato, person who goes naked. Oge Mwapo Ahebi, that's when she went into exile. Igbo women were said to manifest very little, quote unquote, interest in personal apparel. There was, let me see. So we have another term during that time called, did I say Mbwata? Is that the first one? Yeah, Mbwata, okay. So another term used was Adana, who also operated, the Adana also operated during this time. The Adana did not get married. Like the Mbwata, she entertained her patrons from the comforts of her home. The Adana had very few clients, but the clients were regular, and the women often treated them to palm wine, kai, cigarettes, and other provisions. The Adana normally set up shop in front of her home, which helped attract prospective clients. Some Adanas maintained palm wine parlors, and others ran full-fledged eateries called mama puts, right? So you have these various, what is it called, categories of women that participated in sex work, what I call sex work. The Ikwele exemplified the I don't care disposition. They were the sassy mamas with an attitude. The Okwenu, which translated literally into high and blazing fire. The Okwenu and Ikwele could not care less. They were brazen and they had an in-your-face attitude. In other words, fawalanya, they did not listen to reason. Perhaps the Ikwele and Okwenu, in fact, needed to draw attention to themselves in a way that had not been necessary during an earlier time, right? Then you have the Okada. The Okada is the most contemporary word for prostitute and calls to mind the ubiquitous motorcycles that have replaced taxi cabs in most of Nigeria. The term Okada dates back to the 1980s, a rough period of economic life in Nigeria when motorcycles emerged as cheap alternatives to expensive taxi cabs. In Nsukka, a prostitute is currently called Okada because one hops on her as one hops on a motorcycle. With quote unquote modernity, especially in the fast-paced life of urban areas, the indigenous institution wherein the Adanas, Okwenus, Ikwelas, and Mwatas performed a wide variety of services, including cooking, conversation, and so forth, has now evolved into this present form. Now it is a service that allows clients only enough time to hop on and off an Okada hastily. So I just wanted to, in a sense, give you a sense of, well, how is it historically changing? In the pre-colonial era, that whole conceptualization of prostitute was not just about sex. It was about conversation. It was about food. It was about buying and selling goods, not just the female body, right? But as things have changed, now that institution of prostitution in this area has now become something that is more akin to what we understand to be prostitution in today's age. In the pre-colonial era, Igbo women never had pimps. They were in charge of their own bodies and decided when, where, for how much. Never had any pimps.
Thank you. I want to ask Emeka, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Emeka Nawadioke. It appears that you had something that you would like to say. And then after that, I'd like to hear from Jay West. Thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. My name is Emeka Nwadioke. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm calling from Lagos, Nigeria. I must say the session has been most insightful. I couldn't have missed it for anything. I want to piggyback a bit to what the prof said about the British maybe kind of dumping the king subsequently. I want to believe that because essentially I want to see the British as probably paying some premium on the traditional institutions, which is probably why they, of course, when they went to the north, they sought out the MS. Same thing with the west, and probably coming down to the east, they had to invent their own version of the king. So, but obviously they had some respect for the traditional institution, and also for a reason, because they knew that if they were to trump the traditional institution, they're going to have a major challenge. But again, you have a point when you say that they've apparently found the king useful at some point, and then had to more or less dump her. But looking at it from the justice perspective, you will also see that it's consistent with justice, it's consistent with, upholding tradition and culture, which is why obviously it would be antithetical for them to, have endorsed the woman meddling with the masquerade, even when, of course, some men, only men, real men, so to speak, can even meddle with the masquerade. Some men can't even go near the masquerade. So for me, it's consistent with upholding culture, and even again, like the point I made on the chat, it's also ties to even the present day jurisprudence, even in our country, where of course, culture is also supported massively by law, except when it's seen to be repugnant to natural justice. That's only actually when the courts and the law intervene. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you
for those comments, and I will like to respond. I take your comments, well, but I must say that historically the British did not support. So this is not a matter of them supporting traditional values or leadership. No, that's not what it was. It happened to emerge that way because they decided to hands off. They never supported Igbo land or Igbo values or of leadership. As you know, in another part of Nigeria, have the 1929 Women's War. Ogomwani. They didn't respect anything that that the Igbo people valued. They actually worked to destroy our government processes. They worked to destroy our economic processes. So the fact that they are now seemingly siding with the traditional leadership, they're not doing so because they support it. They're doing so because Ahebi, in their mind, has become too much trouble. It's too much trouble for us, to continue doing this, right? They had already experienced the 1929 Women's War in another part of Igbo land. The warrant chief institution had crumbled. In its place, they are now putting in what they call the bench system, where they had 8 people as opposed to 1 person. So their system is crumbling. They're not doing it because, they saw something good in Igbo. No, that's not. I mean, they arrive at the same, what is it called? The end is the end, but it's the reasons why they're actually doing it is not because they've looked at this culture and respect what this culture is about. So that's where you and I differ in terms of historical evidence that tells us, this is what they were doing. And so, yes, they did eventually side with the gerontocracy, but not for the reasons that you're thinking. It's not because, they thought, these people are so wonderful, their government is so, no, it was not for those reasons. It's because Ahebi had, even in their mind, she had overstepped. So they just didn't want to deal with her anymore.
Thank you. And unfortunately, that's the way it normally is. When you're useful to them, to people in government, they allow you to speak. But when you're no longer useful, they're not using you anymore, and they're not caring about what you have to say.
Yep.
So
that's exactly it.
But I want to thank the man for his comments, because it brings insight to this discussion, and it allowed you to bring clarity to what was actually going on, because I also felt that was the purpose, that they were respecting the culture, but obviously that wasn't the case. So thank you for clarifying that point.
And Honorable Nwando Achebe did not mention that he was head of the Nigerian Bar Association at some point too, as well. And so that's why he was speaking from the jurisprudence. Yes. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Fields. And your co-moderator is also, I think his internet is working now. So, Mr. Ikome.
Right.
But go ahead, Ms. Fields.
I'd like to give Jay West was supposed to be speaking after the gentleman that just went. So
hello again. Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted, wonderful. I just wanted to thank the doctor for your determination, your focus, your insight on this story. Oh my God, I mean, just your focus to detail, your attention to detail was palpable. I tethered between several emotions. I was saddened at one point. I was angry at one point. I was disappointed at one point. And then ultimately I experienced pride. So I thank you so much for bringing this story to the forefront, because it resounded with me, especially the point where it showed a woman in her tenacity, her dedication to showing her strength and her power, and being able to adapt and adjust to any realm or any area that she was in and dominate in that position.
Yes.
So this story made me feel prideful, and I can't wait to read the book in its entirety. I would definitely be purchasing it. But I want to tell you, when you spoke about prostitution, I don't want to keep harping on that, but in society at this juncture, everybody looks at that as a negative. The overtone of prostitution is because they do have the pimps, they do have the abuse, and they do have other components that entails at this point. However, knowing the history, it would bring about a better understanding and insight to what that really means. And absolutely, when you talked about being in total control of her body, knowing who she was and using her power, her body in a powerful position from a point of power, right? Not of vulnerability, not of being a victim, but of strength in all actuality. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I just can't wait to read the book in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jay,
Jay.
please tell us your background. You're a former police officer. So
right. Formal, right. Formal correctional lieutenant, 32 years in law enforcement, former police officer. At this juncture, I'm a motivational speaker, 6-time published author. I have a nonprofit organization dedicated to young women and teaching them their value. So I would definitely incorporate this into the curriculum just to help them to understand what history entails and who they really are at their core.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Jay.
much, Jay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I cannot even express, just how moved I am by what it is that you've said. What you said is the reason why I do what I do. In the book, I write that Ahebi Ugbabe is every woman. People tend to sort of look at you negatively at, oh, she was a problem. Please, she was a woman who, given what was done to her, was able to rise, and still she rose. And I constantly say to people, put yourself in her position where you're dedicated when you are 10, 12, 13 years old and you have to run. I didn't even give you the half. She was all sorts of stuff, right? So I see her as every woman. I admire Ahebi because sometimes people ask me, oh, why are you writing? Is she? I said, yes, she's every woman, and every woman should see something in her, that gives them pride, and still she overcame. And so thank you for sharing that, because that is the reason why I couldn't leave the story. Like, it needed to be unearthed. And, it took me as long as it did,
movie, Doctor.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a movie. I can see this being a movie. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It needs to be on the big screen.
Yeah.
I speak that into the universe.
I thought the same thing too.
Yes, it needs to be. I'm telling you, because I'm so emotional right now. I promise you.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to do a docudrama first, and then whether it's a movie or a series is what I'm interested, because I have a theater background, theater, music, and dance. There's a lot of, which I didn't play for you, there's music. So when you talk about, oh, she's going to Galaland, there's songs that they're singing. I collected all those songs. When they seized her masquerade, there were songs of mockery the village sang. I have all of that. And so, yes, sort of looking for the right partners to get this done. And because you know me, it's not like I haven't had the opportunity. It has to be done well. Like, it's my baby. I'm not going to do it unless it's done well.
Professor Achebe, you are in the right place, because we have that creative writing, a creative side of our organization where we do performing arts and stuff like that. In fact, the way that I knew Jay was from Kenyatta. Chief Kenyatta, who just also became a chief that we nominated, and he's in theater from Howard University. That's how I met him. And in Miami they're doing, he's in the theater. He actually runs the theater there to us. So, but that's something that we can talk about offline.
Thank you.
Back to you, Miss. Oh, I think Jay was saying something.
No, I was saying, if I can assist in any way, please let me know. Don't hesitate to call me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like the co-moderator, Ikome. I'd like for you to come to the forefront, please. Can you hear me?
Mr. Kume, I thought you were ready. You said you were.
Okay. Okay. Right now,
I think I just heard his voice. Did you hear his voice? Yeah.
I didn't hear it.
Mr. Kume? All right. Well, so that's okay. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Joan Ife Onat, and I apologize. Please correct me, but it seems that you have something to say about the association with Women's Month and how this was perfect for this book at this time. Could you please speak about that?
Good afternoon, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited. Dr. Ezi invited me. I am also a storyteller. I write my own stories based on the non-fictional stories we were given when we were a child. And I do have a program that I do celebrate our women on my pages. And so I was saying this comes in a very right time and very impactful in celebrating Women's Month, and we're celebrating our women. And so I'm asking that I would definitely love to collaborate when times come to do maybe a movie or what, but I do have a Facebook and Instagram, and I have just about ready to complete posting as 2024 celebration of our women. I took the specific women from my tribe, which is the Efeks, to kind of talk about some of the things women there do and how they were able to keep their homes going with maybe some one product like plantain, and you could cook it in different ways, and supporting children going to school, which all of our women do. Those who went to the market to sell and bring money to send their kids to school. So I am so excited. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. And for what you're doing to shine light on Efik women. My mother grew up in Efik land. She speaks Efik fluently. So I have that connection. I don't speak Efik, unfortunately, but my mom does.
Well, we'll connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields? I think we have two people raising their hands. Oh, Mr. Sampson. Ms. Fields, I think we lost you. Well, Mr. Sampson, that I had introduced to us earlier, that is from Enugu Ezike, has something to say. I think, let me ask him to unmute himself, or I will unmute him. Mr. Sampson? Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very glad to be here. I just want to express my gratitude to Professor Achebe for a great work she has done by letting the whole world know about this story that would have been covered. I stand here as like representing my people of Enugu Ezike. I'm from Enugu Ezike. My community is just very close by Olido, very close by to
I went there. Ogurite, yeah. I visited, yeah.
Yeah, and Umida.
Okay,
so in our dialect, I say Anyaleka is a mashi for a great work done. So connecting the story to reality and even present day, Dr. Ezi sent me to go and find more about the story. So I was able to go to Umida. I met people and asked them about the story. They said they didn't know about the story. So eventually one of the persons I met directed me to the surviving family of the Ahebi Ugbabe people, on which I was able to get to a man called Iroko Itodo. So Iroko Itodo is a son of the elder brother of Ahebi Ugbabe. So he also uphold the story, and most of what you said here, most of what I written in the story are exactly what he told me. So although I had a little issue or difficulty in the aspect of, just like you experienced the same issue of trying to find out why did he run out of the home, what really happened. The man did not really want to go into details about that. He just told me that there was no problem. She just traveled. She just traveled. That's what happened. So, but some other things like how she ruled, how she was connected to Ata in Ikala land and all those, he told me, and even some present evidences that are there. For instance, the house that she lived, one of her palace, is still standing there right now. So one of the school that was dedicated to her, Ahebi Primary School, Umida, was there. And even the crown that she wore, the man told me that he has it, although he could not show me that very day. He said that he normally keep it secret because of people coming to steal it. So he told me that if I can come another day, that he can.
Yeah, I don't. Has it passed as a crime? Because all of that is in my 15 years. It's in my book. I have footage. So this did not arise out of interview. I interviewed that person you're talking to. It didn't arise out of interviewing one person.
Please come and put all these videos together now.
I've interviewed.
We'll be posting them tomorrow.
Wait, hold on, Sapa. Let me meet the person that's in there now. Hold on just a minute.
So let me arrange it in CapCut so that I won't go and...
I'm so sorry.
So I interviewed over 300 plus people for this book. It's not one person. On all sides.
That's great.
So you're talking about Ogurute, Omoeda, all that area. If you read this book, you'll see I interviewed the people that were her daughters, her son, all of that, right? So the crown that you're talking about is in this book. The school, I have video footage. So these people that you're talking about don't know this story like I know it. This was my sweat equity, right? So you're getting a view from one person. I'm getting my view from 300 plus people that I interviewed separately, plus the Colonial Archive, plus the Ata of Igalaland and people in Igalaland. That's how this book emerged.
Wonderful.
And Professor Achebe, we also encourage them that they should come and also do not feel like, that everyone who doesn't have, it's a journey. In a journey, you might have to go, sometimes God takes us in different ways to bring us back to do something. Yeah. And that's what we would like. We wanted them to come and hear what you have to say. And so that they too themselves would not feel ashamed of that aspect of her life, right? But use it as an educational tool to help others. Because we also thought, as I was reading your book, I said to myself, and I had several conversations, sometimes we got it, like my son and I, he said he was going to be here, but I wish he was. And we were so impressed by how his approach. Mr. Ekome also had that conversation with him too. And I was saying that I didn't think that she had the middle side of it where there was a solution. If I were put in that same situation, I'm not going to want to be a slave.
Yeah, exactly.
So the extreme was the other solution that she has. And that kind of shows you the kind of individual. No, she wasn't going to say, okay, let me just absorb this thing and that's it. That's commendable, really. And so whatever she had to go there, whatever she had to do to get up to the point where she now became, according to Sampson, they said that she became a refugee, even, also spoke about that. Who knew what was going on with the girls or women that she also, found married, right? And also made babies, and then she, to continue the lineage. So there's a lot about this thing. And that's something that we would love to help you, to help the community to embrace this thing so that people can learn from it.
Yeah.
But let me know.
Yeah, my method has always, because I've had a relationship with, it's not just Umweda, Ogurute, Nugwezike, the Nsukka area for over 30 years. And before that, I grew up in Nsukka. So, I mean, when people say, why did you choose? I'm not from Nsukka. And that's why I talk about, I became Wada. I know what I did in order for the community to welcome me. Nobody's going to give you these stories. You have to pay your dues. And your dues is they're watching you. I've presented my work to community. So when, people say, oh, they don't know. I mean, I've been at this for almost 30 years. People have died. People that I've interviewed had died. I've visited the school several times, her home. I even have video from her school. And, but the painful thing is, what, as an oral historian, what happens is that the archive, what I call the living archive, if you do not document it, it dies.
Yes.
And then we lose all this knowledge. And so the vast majority of the people that I interviewed for this book are no more. When I would go back and visit and I'll ask, how about this person? He had passed away. How about this person? They've passed away. So these people who are now there are too young to know this story. And so they really need to, one of the things that I would like to do, and I hope at some point I can, is get some, a lot of copies of this book to them, right? I wanted to do it through the primary school, which is there, because, and I don't know if the principal, the person I met, is still there. I would seriously doubt so, because it's been many, many years. But yeah, it is a history to be proud of, right?
Yes, yes.
And I mean, she now has a Wikipedia page, so it's, I'm really proud to see where Ahebi has gone. And these small little document, even though they don't give me credit, that's fine. That part of it is not so nice, but there's at least her story is being told. And that was my aim, is to uncover this and let this be part of history. So when we start talking about who are like the most incredible female leaders, that Ahebi is part of that dialogue, and she's becoming part of that dialogue. And that was my aim. So I'm very, very happy about that.
Can I chime in?
Hello? Miss Fields,
Yeah.
Dr. Deluga would like to join in.
Emeka, no, two people wrote in the chat. Emeka, no, Dike was one. He says, I know Nolly would be keen on this epic story. I know a mega actor who could be keen on the same. And I'd like you to elaborate on that. And then Kanyo, and forgive me if I mispronounce these names, because I don't mean to. But Kanyo Adeluga says, what was the reaction of the Umada to Ahebi's rise to power and rulership? And first, I'd like to hear from Emeka and then from Kanya. Thank you.
So let me take the last one first, because that's a question. Because Ahebi totally removed herself from the female section of society. So in Igbo land, you had this gerontocracy, male and female, right? She removed herself totally from the female section of society. She became a man and operated in the male section of society. And so she didn't really have a whole lot of dealings with the and in the Nsukka area, they're not called Umwada, they're called Inyumdi. What is it? Umunye and anyway, she didn't really have any kind of close dealings with them, right? She firmly saw herself as operating in the male part of society. However, as I was doing research and interview, because I interviewed both men and women, there you can tell that there was a lot of pride. There's a lot of pridefulness in women, and this person that almost as though they have elevated her. And I do write about the mystical Ahebi. They've elevated her to that level. So they talk about her home, which Samson mentioned, that's still there, right? And they talk about this crow that crows, from the that is, you know, I think they say at 12 midnight they hear the crowing of a cock every day at 12 midnight. And that's
wow.
part of this establishing the mythical, Ahebi. We do know that she worked with not only you know, medicine men in Inugwezike, but she brought in medicine men from Igala land as well to help elevate her and keep her powerful. So it wasn't, so we're not just dealing with somebody who is operating in the human realm. We're dealing with somebody who is able to tap into some of these spiritual powers that also in turn elevate her. Right. So yeah, so that's how I'm gonna, you know, talk about that. Then I think the other one was Nollywood. I have had people from Nollywood contact me again. You know, I am looking for the right partners. You know, I know what my sweat equity in this is, and you know, it has to be done well. So when I find the right partners, I will move accordingly.
I get you, sister.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting you say that, and then you go back to your father's book in terms of tell your own story. And you're
That's
absolutely right. You want total control. You want it stated as you would like, as you want it to be stated. So many
Yes.
times, and I know that books have been created into movies and they don't tell the same story.
Yes, exactly.
They don't, they twist it to what they feel people would like to hear, as
Yes.
opposed to what were
Yes.
the actual facts.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. Thank you. And I want to just say to you too, someone else raised their hand and they said that, oh, two other people. When you, okay, and I do want to get back to, okay, that was addressed, I apologize. Jay West said, when you state she became a man, are you referring to her physical appearance or in regards to her positioning?
Okay.
And
So,
then Emmanuel Yucha has a statement. I'll read that afterwards. You go right ahead,
okay.
answer that.
Yeah, so you know, this whole institution goes back to an institution I was trying to describe earlier, where in not just Igbo land, but in all of Africa, this whole idea of your sex, which is your biological sex, and your gender are never the same thing. So you can be born biologically female, like I am, but you can become a man. And that man is not that physically changed from my biological femaleness to maleness. It just means that the way that society categorizes you is male, right? So no, she didn't change in terms of what it is that she wore. I mean, she wore, what she did wear was um um you know, what is it called, outfits that showed her chieftaincy. And it wasn't just chieftaincy, the fact that she was a king, and she modeled that from Igala land. So the kind of outfits that Igala kings, the Atas, wore is what she wore, right? So that had less to do with masculinity and femininity and more to do with the institution which she was modeling, right? So there wasn't any kind of tension, and there never is in these cultures, that a woman can become a man, become a social man, and men can be social women. In Unsoka division, I have an article about male priestesses, you know, men who were born biologically men, but they're categorized as women. And I remember when I asked one of the priestesses, I said, so how did you become a woman? And he became offended. It's like, I didn't become a woman, I am woman. But he's married to a woman. You know, in that case, they were actually dressing as women. So the way they tied their rapa was different from the way that men do. And they observed all the taboos that women observe. It's very, very fascinating, this institution. But just to show you that, you know, the culture is so fluid and flexible and allows for this gendered transformation. But it's not, your sex isn't transforming. Your sex never transforms, but your gender can transform, if that makes sense.
If I may chip in a bit.
Go right ahead.
Okay. when we talk about a man in the sense a woman being a man, it's not for physical contact. It's for purposes of inheritance. Because by the position of the king, she has acquired enormous wealth. So she's interest is someone to inherit me. By her position, she has taken some oath, she has come into some contact with some shrine to which only a man will come. And at that level, nobody will see her physical body, nobody will touch her hair. So when you have done such rituals, you become a man in this strictest sense of it, but not any woman you have, any woman you get to a position or if you marry, does not mean for purposes of you are going meeting. No. It's for raising an offspring for purposes of inheritance. That's why. That's when we call it. That is the clarification. And then the concept is sonorous marriage. Like you have the British marriage, like you have contractual marriage, like you have family marriage. It is sonorous. You marry so that whatever you have acquired does not leave. Not that purposes of having a mating or physical contact. No.
Oh yeah, no, it's none of these marriages are homosexual in nature, and I go into this in my book because some Western scholars have challenged, me that you're ignoring, the fact that this might be homosexual, right? I stand because I'm not only Wada Igbo. I've done my research. This is not. I've interviewed hundreds of women involved in it's called woman to woman marriage. That's what it's called. One of my aunties was married to a woman. It is not lesbian in nature. It's about a woman assuming the gendered role of man, social role of father and of husband, and marrying a woman so that they can have children. Kobiechina, let my path not close. That's right. Why, and it's not just wealthy women that do this. You have instances where, for instance, I'm married to a man, and that's why in my book I argue about child price. Should not be called bride price because it has nothing to do with a woman. We put down this what is it called, amount of money in Igbo land, so that the children born of the union will bear the name of the man. It's for that ability. If you don't put it down, the woman, you have a child with a man, they're bearing the woman's name, right? So I call it, in my work, I say a more apt term for this is child price. However, why I wanted to sort of put this into context is it's not just wealthy women. Some women do this solely because they want to see their own line. Obiechina, let my line not close, so that they can have people that bear their names. So as I'm married to a man and my child bears his name, I can turn around and marry a woman. So far as I go through the ritual, the bride and all of that, when that woman has a child, that child bears my name, Achebe, and belongs to me. And again, the inheritance inherits from me. That is what Ahebi Ugbabe was doing. So in marrying many wives, what she was doing was to propel her own name. All of her kids bore the last name Ahebi. So and so Ahebi, so and so Ahebi. But there is no kind of sexual contact between them. It is not lesbian in nature. And this does not mean that there is no homosexuality in Africa. Please say it, because I work on sexuality. So I can tell you about same-sex desire in Nigeria and all of that. But this is a different institution.
This is very enlightening. Good.
Yes, and I think thank you for addressing that, because that was the next topic that I wanted to bring up. But I also want to, the she wife and how the dowry is paid so that the lineage can continue. That's the purpose of it.
Yes.
But I do want to get back to some of the chats and some people, what people had to say. People said a lot of things. Okay.
I think Dr. Delega had raised his hands at some point. Dr. Delega?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, she had addressed my question. But I have another question in the chat. This concept of organizing her own funeral, was that something that was common in a Nukwe speaking? Or was it like Halat or Fala, because that's what you do in King? Can you throw more light on that?
Yeah, oh yes, for sure. Ikwo Nweyanandu is not common anywhere in Igbo land. This is the first time that I had heard of it. And so, dug into it. And as you know, it is really about the ushering into the world of the ancestors. That is what, when you go through the funeral rites, certain things are done so that that person is buried well. And when that person is buried well, they can then become an ancestor. The way I describe it in my work is that whole idea of a never-ending cycle of life. If you don't perform certain rituals, you don't become an ancestor. So she knew this, she knows her culture. And she wasn't clear, she wasn't confident that because of everything that had happened, because of the tensions between her and the leadership in Igwe that they would actually perform the burial rites once she dies in the way that they should. So what she did was essentially create. It's not a common, and I haven't seen it done anywhere else. This ritual where she essentially said, I want you all to perform my burial while I'm here. I want to see, what everybody's going to do. And this thing went on for days. She went out with a bang, so that when she now eventually died, it was very quiet because she had already done this big thing. And in fact, where she's buried, there's no tombstone. But I do have pictures of where she's buried in my book, right? Because, they were able to point it out to me.
Okay, that's very awesome, very good program now. It feels okay.
Yes, I want to read some of the comments in chat because I would like for some people to speak up, but I want to go through them first so that we are all aware of what's been going on in the chat. Emmanuel Ucha says to everyone, thank you, Dr. Nwando Achebe, for the incredible body of work. How do we change the current society's view on females that tap into their masculinity? And then Kanyanyo Adelego, and again, I say I apologize if I mispronounce your name, and please correct me later. Isn't it interesting that her story is not well known among her people? Our educational system is quite deficient. And then Olivia BJA says, a very insightful section, and I commend Dr. Nwando Achebe for incredible work and all-round knowledge. We have got a generation that needs to hear about these cultural aspects. And then Emika Nawadioke says, I actually think that the book should be made compulsory reading by the state governments as a part of the history curriculum for secondary schools. And then, I know I'm saying a lot, but people had a lot to say. Emmanuel Ucha said, our curriculum needs to be reformed. A lot of history is getting past us. And then Kayanyo Odega says, is this a concept of performing one's funeral ceremony or cultural in Anuba Ezike? And then Jay West says, thank you very much for the clarification. It's very insightful. And then from Idea Digital Hub to everyone, why did she bury herself? Does that mean she had no offspring to bury her? So I apologize because that was a lot, okay? But I don't, and then more coming.
Yeah, I have to leave because I was told till 1. I have other but there aren't many questions in there. The last one was because I answered the whole burying herself while she was still alive. Right. Did she not have an offspring? So she had one biological child who didn't survive, but she did adopt somebody called Stephen Ahebi, who was not an Igbo person. In fact, I visited with Stephen Ahebi's family, his wife and his children, and all of that is in the book as well. And so this is the person that she brought closest. He fought in the Nigerian Biafran War. In fact, his picture is in the book as well, Stephen Ahebi. And so she was not, because she now didn't have any of her biological, remember she had a lot of children, but they were all non-biological because she had married wives and those wives had bare children. So she wanted to make sure that things were done according to custom. And it is so vitally important to usher her into the world of ancestors as opposed to the world of evil spirits. So I mean, you have to understand that, like, you have to die a good death and receive a good burial to make that transition in Igbo land. And that's what she was trying to ensure happens. She didn't want to leave it for fate or, no, we're going to do it and make sure we do it well.
All right, Professor. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Fields, so we can let Professor Achebe go. Yeah. I know we don't want to let you go.
I thought this was going to be till 1, so I had other things.
Yes, we wanted it to be till 1, but it's so exciting, as people are saying, and so you guys have to write a letter or something and beg Professor Achebe to come back again and do this. But let me just let Miss Fields finish her sentence. Miss Fields, you were saying?
No, I just want to thank you for coming and for this insightful, and you see how explosive it is because so many people have so many things to say and it's not over yet. But yes, thank you so very, very much. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Essay, for choosing this as a topic.
Thank you. All right, so Professor Achebe, so many things to do from this. We also have our own homework as well. We'll go looking for who will help us out so we can purchase additional books. We've asked Honorable Nwando to see if he can help us to be able to put this thing in the schools over there as well, if possible here too as well. Right? So I'll discuss that with Jay and some of us that are here and see how we can do that. But we just want to say thank you so very much and happy Easter. Happy Easter. And look forward to talking with you again. And for the young children, this is their community service. So we will make out their community service certificates to them.
They were amazing. Thank you so very much for having me. It's always wonderful. A pleasure.
Wonderful, Prof.
Thank you. Yes, it was wonderful.
And talk about which I'm most passionate about. And what I'm most passionate about is uncovering our histories so that we as Black people, because this is not, I always say to, my colleagues, what I do to empower us as Black people. Yes. For us to be able to look and say, our ancestors and ancestresses did so much to allow us to have this platform. Yes. Right? Without their sacrifices, we won't be here. And so, that is really what propels me in terms of trying to, put these histories together. My latest book, Female Monarchs and Merchant Queens in Africa, I do just that. That is dedicated to young African-American and African Caribbean boys and girls to know that you too have something to be proud of when it comes to Africa, and to know that you please own all of African history. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't own it. Someone like me, I know exactly where it comes from. So it's harder for me to be talking about Hatshepsut in Egypt and be like, oh, she's no, but for African Americans, for African Caribbean, anywhere there is a Black man, he or she is an African. So, you know, what it is that I'm doing is to empower us to be able to know that we are never less than. Never. Don't let anyone tell you that. You come from greatness.
Yes.
Right? Greatness.
Yes.
That's why I do what I do. And this is not to say that these lives aren't complex. People are always, there are always complexities. Nobody's perfect. But it gives me pride to know that I can say that a woman like Ahebi Ugbabe lived, excelled, and that I'm able to, in a little way, present her to the world. And we'll continue to do what we need to do. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. All right. That said, we will wrap up the session, and please have a happy Holy Week. Some people will call it Easter as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Happy
me.
Resurrection Day.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Okay, I am going to now close